So we're continuing in Meretz Hashem in Siman Kuf Ches, Siman 108, the halachos concerning the laws of chitin v'kemach l'matzos, the type of wheat and flour one could use for matzah. So the Kitzur says it's al sif aleph ksiv u'shmartem etz hamatzos. So the Torah says you have to guard the matzos. What does this mean? Mikash tzrichen lishmor asa chitin l'shem mitzvos matzos. This is very important. Here, the Kitzur is introducing us to the concept of shmura matzah. What does shmura matzah mean? So the Torah says you have to guard the matzahs, meaning what? That you have to guard the wheat. You have to guard the wheat that's going to be used to make the matzahs mitzvah. The matzahs for which you're going to use it, the leil haseder, l'shum matzahs mitzvah, shelo yavo aleihem mayim. So, Shmarta Matzah means that it is not only enough. Now, this is specifically talking about the matzah that you're going to use for the mitzvah of matzah at the Seder. It is not enough that matzah not be chametz, but rather again, that matzah must actually be guarded. So from the time that the wheat is harvested, you actually have to guard it, that it doesn't come in contact with water. Well, that's tzas migdoya poskim, zal, from some of the poskim we learn, tzrichim shmira miyad mishas ktsira ve'elach. So some poskim even say that for the matzah that's going to be used for the Seder, even the wheat, from the moment that the wheat is harvested, right, that the wheat has to be guarded. Now understand, you can't make chametz with wheat and water, right? Remember, chametz comes about with flour and water. But yet, some poskim hold that for shmura matzah, the wheat itself, from the moment that it's been harvested, has to be guarded from coming in contact with water. But again, the Kitzur writes, our minhag is to follow the opinion that says, no, you don't have to guard the wheat from the time that it's harvested, rather you just have to guard the wheat from the time that it's ground into flour. So that from the moment it's ground into flour, one should be vigilant that it should not come in contact with any type of water. But those who are medaktik, right? Those who are very careful to performance of mitzvos are careful that the wheat itself, from the time that it's harvested, does not come into contact with any type of water. So I'll say, one thing you should understand is that halacha l'maisa, when you buy shmura matzah today, right? When you buy regular matzah, that's kosher Pesach. So that matzah, obviously, again, from the time that it's become flour, it's been guarded from water. So therefore, one can make the argument that even like all types of matzah have a certain element of being shmura matzah. But what we call shmura matzah, right, the type of matzah that Baruch Hashem, we have the schus to pay a lot of money per pound, that's shmura mishas ketzira. That is guarded from the time that it's harvested. Sorry, from the time that the wheat is harvested, it does not come in contact with water. He goes on, he says, ad sheyis yabshu kol tzarcham v'yalbinu, ki az im yerdu aleim geshamim yichmutzu afilu b'mechuber, kevan shenetzrichen ol b'karka. So this is interesting. So the Kitzur adds in another chumrah over here that he says that wheat that you're, or I should say grain, wheat stalks that you're going to use for shmura matzah, you should be careful not to leave it in the ground until it's fully ripened. Now apparently the way that you could tell that grain is fully ripened is that it's dry and it turns white. Because at that point, it no longer needs the ground. Because it no longer needs the ground, it's considered to be almost as if it's detached, and therefore, if it rains, then the stalks of wheat have come in contact with water. Al kain. Therefore, the Kitzur writes, Ra'i v'nochon liktzor ba'od sheyesh b'an od kitzas mare yarkos. So therefore, he says that halacha l'maisa, it is best to harvest the wheat when there's still a little bit of a greenish appearance. In other words, it's not fully ripened. Therefore, it still requires the earth. Because it requires the earth, if water falls on it, it's not a problem. Misha efshalo b'chitin shmura mishas ktsira l'chol yemei hachag matov. So this is very interesting. So again, a very important halacha that comes out over here. So what we call shmura matzah today is shmura mishas ktsira. That from the time that the wheat was harvested, care and concern has been taken to ensure that it does not come in contact with any water. It's important to understand that there's another opinion about shmura matzah, which is that from the time that it's made into flour, it shouldn't come into contact with any water. So machlok is about the definition of shmura matzah. We paskin like the first opinion, and therefore ideally, we tried to have matzah that has not come in contact with water from the time that the stalks were harvested. Additionally, the Kitzur says, don't wait until the stalks are fully mature to harvest it. Rather, harvest it a little bit early as well. Now, here the Kitzur adds on something very interesting. This is a very interesting halacha. So the Kitzur says, essentially, if you could use shmura matzah the entire Pesach, that is ideal. Very interesting. So the Kitzur is very interesting halacha. So the Kitzur says, ideally, or matov, it is definitely praiseworthy that halacha l'maisa, one use shmura matzah the entire Pesach. But if you can't use shmura matzah the entire Pesach, either because, again, it is very expensive, or because a person maybe doesn't like it as much, so halacha l'maisa, one should at least go ahead and use shmura matzah for the 2 nights of the Seder, which I think is probably how many people conduct themselves. They shmura matzah for the Seder, and then for the rest of the Pesach, could eat regular matzah. Now, it's important to understand, as we mentioned before, even regular matzah has a little bit of the status of shmura matzah, and that it's guarded from the time that it's made into flour. But ideally, says the Kitzur, if you certainly to use shmura matzah for the Seder, for the Starim, but if you could also use shmura matzah for the rest of Pesach, all the more so, it's roi. Or I should say it's tov, it's good. Okay, in halacha beis, chitim shenimsu behem mevukos o mitzu machos hashar muter. This is very interesting. If halacha l'maisa, you find within the wheat kernels that are split open or are sprouting, which means they've come into contact with liquid. What's the halacha? So those are chametz, b'ashar muter. O bevad shivaru osan, assuming that, again, you're able to go out and separate them out. O shetzri o tzrichin ledaktek hetiv im yesh shamal kol panim shishi kinayim avokos hamitzu machos. Good. So the idea over here is that if you find certain parts of the stalk, certain kernels that are split open or that are sprouting, indicating that they become chametz. If you could separate them out, that's fantastic. Otherwise, they could be batal b'shishim. If you have 60 times more regular kernels, or I should say non-chametz kernels, than chametz kernels, then ultimately, again, the mixture is permitted. U'lechatchila yesh lahad deliver gam minachitim sha'achlu mehen achbarin. Furthermore, it says something very interesting. If you find wheat and the wheat kernels have been eaten a little bit by mice, ideally best to get rid of those as well, or to at least make sure that there's 60 times more wheat. We'll say we hear about these things and we think to ourselves, of course you throw that out. We live in a very disposable society. But Lamaisa, once upon a time it wasn't so pashat, and a person would have to be able to conserve a bit more. Okay, that's the halacha. O shahayu munachin beboros imhen yeveshos v'kashos v'nishtana mar'ehen ksheros. So again, if you have wheat that arrived by ship, right, or for that matter, again, it was stored inside of a pit in the ground. As long as you see that the wheat is dry and hard, and ultimately, again, their appearance has not changed, meaning referencing back to the last halacha, they haven't split or sprouted. Ksheros, they're good for Pesach. V'im hayu munachos ba'aliyah v'yardolem geshamim derech hagag b'ktsas makomos asuros. But let's say you put the wheat in the attic and it came in contact with moisture, then halacha l'maisa, again, it's asur. Ba'alim nafalem ktsas sheleg o ktsas mayim b'makom echad misalek osan sheish l'stapik b'ayim b'ashar mutaros. It's interesting, but if a little bit of water or a little bit of snow, for that matter, fell on one place, then halacha l'maisa, again, you remove whatever you have a doubt about, and the rest of it ultimately, again, is mutter. Incredible. All right, we'll stop over here. Actually, you know what, we'll do we'll stop over here for today, actually. So 2 halachas today. So again, we're going to see that in some of these halachas, there's a lot of specificity that perhaps we don't come in contact with year in, year out, but nevertheless, interesting halachas to contemplate. All right, shkayach everyone.